right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending where you are. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chloe Gordon. I'm the VP of Digital here at Evident, and it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Rick Ferguson to the webinar. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here, Chloe.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about, how to get started in 3D printing. We called it the beginner's guide to 3D printing. And so, Dr. Ferguson, I was thinking about how to introduce you. I couldn't decide where to start because you come to us with so much information and such a wealth of knowledge. So I thought, you have a bit of a PowerPoint. I'm going to pass it over to you. And why don't you give us a little bit of background and history on kind of the knowledge base that you're bringing to the table?
I would be happy to do that. So you should be able to see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. So just a little bit of background about me. I'm the founder. My wife and I are the founders of Implant Educators Academy and Digital Educators. You see the websites on there. For the last 15 years, we have been running a training course teaching dentists how to become implantologists, all aspects of dental implants. And about 5 years ago, we started Digital Educators to bring the digital aspect to dentistry and specifically implant dentistry. So in our continuum, we teach now actually how to 3D print surgical guides, how to design and 3D print surgical guides. We've been doing guided surgery in our continuum for about 5 years now. We switched from doing everything freehand to pretty much doing everything guided. And of course, doing the mock-ups and the digital smile design ahead of time. And that's where I think Evident Lab really shines and can help folks with that aspect of it so that they can then plan their guides so that the implants are in the correct positions. By the way, I did put my personal email address there if anybody wants to contact me, get more information.
Thank you.
drferguson@aol.com. This is our course. It's a 6-weekend live surgery course run with University of Florida. As I said, we were in our 15th year, but docs can come from any state in the US as long as they have a US license, place implants, do bone grafts, do all on X cases. We do quite a few all on X cases that's sort of in vogue these days. And folks want to learn that. So they actually come down to Florida and get to actually do the cases. And we go through the planning stage all the way to the execution of the case. 6 or more implants, typically 5, 6 or more implants, immediate load, etc. All right. And of course, we also have a private practice. My wife, Kathy, and I have a private practice in a town called Davie. It's near Fort Lauderdale, just west of Fort Lauderdale. And we have a small private practice where we have all the digital technology we need, including intraoral scanner, CBCT, milling. We use face scanning, every aspect of digital technology that's available today to plan and execute some pretty neat kind of dentistry. And of course, the latest thing that we've pretty much added, I say latest because we've been doing it for about 5 years in our practice, is of course 3D printing. This is our little 3D printing lab that we put together. It was a closet that we converted, and we have more printers than what you see here. This is an old photograph, but we've added a couple more Formlabs printers and a couple other the lower cost printers that we'll talk about already or later today. But you can see we're already doing this in our practice. It's not the future, it's here. And these are all the different things that we actually 3D print in our practice. Everything you see on the screen here, we have the ability to 3D print. Now, of course, the ability comes with the design. And again, that's where Evident, I think, can help you out. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I formed this dental 3D printing group on Facebook. And just this last week, we reached over 14,000 members. And my goal with this group was to get people started with 3D printing, especially the low-cost 3D printers that maybe aren't necessarily designed for dentistry, but we have adopted them for dentistry. And actually what you see here on the screen is all the 3D printers that we have worked with and used in the last 5 years, and also reviewed and posted settings, etc., on our Facebook group. So for the last 5 years, we've been testing these printers, working out the settings for use in dentistry. Some of them are dental printers and some of them are not. Some of them are printers you can buy on Amazon, but we figured out how to use them to print, everything from surgical guides to temporaries, even to temporary hybrids for immediate load, all on X-type cases. So that's just a little bit about where I am in the 3D printing and digital technology. And I'm going to unshare that screen.
Perfect.
And,
well, thank you.
Chloe, I'm going to let you take back over.
Thank you. And that was perfect. That's a lot of printers. And we got our first question. It's where did you get the idea to create the 3D printing Facebook group?
So what happened was I started my journey with 3D printing with filament printers, and then we went over to resin printers, which are more common in dentistry, obviously. And I found that there were, other groups online that were doing similar things, not necessarily related to dentistry. And when I realized that some of these lower cost printers could be used in dentistry because they certainly had the resolution to be used in dentistry, I wanted to create sort of a community of people like-minded like myself who are willing to put a little bit of time and effort into working out the settings and figuring out the applications for some of these printers. And I had done some of it already, but I figured we could sort of cloud source, as they call it now, and get input from folks all over the world. And it is a worldwide group. I have doctors in Papua New Guinea using a low-cost 3D printer to print surgical guides. South Africa, all over Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii. It's really a worldwide presence. And
absolutely. And being a member of it myself, it's a really good community. It's supportive, helpful. People are really happy to share their knowledge. So definitely, for those that aren't a member of it, please look it up. The Dental 3D printing group. It's fantastic. So kind of before we jump in, we have people were sending in their questions all week. So we have a lot of things to get through, but let's take a little look at our audience and kind of calibrate who we have here. And so let's do our first poll, which is, do you have a 3D printer? And if so, what do you have? And we'll take like 30 seconds here and get people to just click in if you can't, and then we'll move on. We'll see what people say here. Because I'm sure as you're seeing, Dr. Ferguson, that there are the interest of 3D printing is skyrocketing, but there's so much information out there that people are kind of hesitant on where to start and, what are you supposed to do? So, this is the perfect webinar I thought to have you on, and you could, help guide us through. And so, thinking through where was the best place to start, and at the beginning. So the most common question that I received was, as a doctor, you're ready to start 3D printing. What are the questions I need to be asking?
so first I would say, what do you want to print? Okay, it's really about the task at hand. What you're really doing with 3D printing is replacing analog techniques with digital techniques. So instead of, for example, pouring a stone model, you can take a digital scan either and store it digitally, but occasionally you'll need to make a model. All right, so you think about it that way. What is my end result? What do I want to print? All right, we started off with surgical guides because we were a surgical practice. Basically, we're doing a lot of implants and we're teaching implants. So figure out what it is you want to print, and then go from there. Then before you buy a printer, I would actually recommend you take a course on using 3D printing for that particular application. I recently gave a lecture and there was a room full of people, and a couple of them had bought 3D printers. One person in particular had spent about $20,000 buying a 3D printer, and he got one surgical guide out of it in 2 years, and then basically said, you know what, I couldn't, the machine wasn't working right, I couldn't figure it out, etc. And it turned out he had never taken a course on 3D printing. You know, he had never taken a course on what the application was that he was trying to do. He went to a dental meeting, saw a 3D printer, and, you know, got wowed by the technology like we all do. And I think that's the first thing. Before you even buy a printer, maybe take a course, all right?
Yeah.
You know, of course, I'm biased. We give courses on 3D printing, but
Go see Dr. Ferguson, everybody.
yeah, so, you know, but this has just been my experience. Know what you're getting into, all right? And the second thing I would say is figure out who in the office is going to do it, because, you know, doctor time is important. Doctor time is the most expensive time. So a lot of it can be delegated. Figure out what it is you're going to delegate, and then you buy a 3D printer based on that, because there are some printers that are easy to use. For example, the Formlabs line of printers, they're not necessarily the fastest, but as far as reliability, I think they're the easiest ones to use. And if you're planning to delegate the 3D printing process, you're probably going to want a company like that behind you and a product like that behind you, because it's as easy as it gets. It's sort of the Apple of 3D printers. You know, if you're willing to put a little bit more time into it and learn, or you want to just learn more about 3D printing and really master it, you can buy a 3D printer on Amazon, you know, for $300 and get into it, and it will be able to print surgical guides and pretty much anything, just at a low volume, and you're going to have to put a little bit more effort into it. It's not quite as easy. It doesn't come pre-calibrated, for example. Doesn't have the resin settings. Each specific prosthesis you're printing uses a different type of resin, and the settings are different for each one. When you have an ecosystem like Formlabs, that's all programmed into the printer. The printer's smart. It comes with a cartridge that you drop into the printer, and the printer then knows all the settings for whatever resin is in that cartridge. Sort of like a HP LaserJet printer. It'll even keep track of how much resin is in the cartridge and let you know when it's going to run out, etc. Whereas the other ones, you have to kind of pour the resin into the tank, keep track of it yourself, etc. And of course, you have to know the settings. And that's one of the things that we do on the Facebook group is, for those who are using some of the lower cost non-dental printer for dental purposes, we figure out the settings. For example, if you want to print a surgical guide, you know, on a Frozen Sonic Mini 4K printer, how do you know what settings to use to get an accurate surgical guides? Because obviously you want your surgical guides to be accurate.
Yeah,
and
important.
how do you do that? Well, myself and other folks, you know, as a sort of as a hobby or for our own purposes, figure out the settings. Let's say I have a new resin I need to figure out a setting for. I'll play with it, print some, you know, it's sort of a trial and error process. But once I figure out the exact settings for that resin on a particular printer, I will post that to the group. And I actually have on the group an Excel spreadsheet that of all the printers, most of the printers you see on here with settings for different dental resins. Okay. If you're using it for a non-dental purpose, it doesn't matter that the setting has to be that accurate. But if you're using for a dental purpose, obviously we need the prints to be dimensionally accurate.
Yeah.
And of course, biocompatibility is an issue as well. I noticed that was one of the questions.
Yeah.
What about non-dental resins versus dental resins?
Yeah.
Especially if you're putting something in the mouth, the resins need to be certified for intraoral use. They need to be tested for tissue sensitivities and allergies and things like that. So the dental resins, such as NextDent resins or Sprint Ray resins, or even the Formlabs resins, are all tested. And we've actually figured out how to use some of those dental resins on some of the low-cost printers as well. And of course, the post-processing, which is another aspect of it, has to be done as well.
Yeah, and then another question that we had was, so, you know, talking about the pre-calibration with the resins, what about, you know, kind of pros and cons between open and closed systems? You know, Formlabs, you have to use their resins, and that makes sense. So then why would you maybe want to get a printer that then is more of an open system? Because, you know, then you need to calibrate.
So in general, whether it be 3D printers or, computers or cell phones, you're going to pay a little bit more for a closed system, sort of like the PC versus the Mac
Mhm.
type of concept. But when the resins are calibrated for a particular printer in closed systems, it works. Again, it's kind of like another dental example of that would be like CEREC
Yeah.
versus buying a generic mill to mill Emacs, for example. Well, the CEREC system might be a little bit more expensive, maybe a lot more expensive, but it all is designed to work together. The software and the machine and the materials are all designed to work together. So that's how it is with 3D printing as well. If you go with SprintRay or Formlabs, for example, Accurata, Nextent, they have resins that are designed and they have all the settings built in. They're going to work with your particular printer and give you the most reliable prints. All right. If you go with an open system, then you're going to either depend on the manufacturer of the particular resin to give you those settings, or you're going to have to figure them out yourself. For example, Keystone Industries, which makes the Keysoft splint material, which is an excellent bite splint material, they have on their website settings for a variety of printers, including some non-dental printers as well, where they've verified and tested that. I'm actually testing a new resin right now from a company called Good Fit Technology, which is a water washable resin for post-processing of the print after it comes out of the printer. And they also are using that similar model where you can go to their website. They only sell the resin to be used in open printers, and they have settings, some of which I've actually given them for a variety of different printers. So that's how you address that open versus closed. Closed systems in general, you're going to have a premium on the price of the resins.
So again, it's back to kind of your preference, how much work do you want to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the next question was similar to scanner ecosystems, where there's extra fees or, support fees, renewal fees, software upgrade fees. Is that the same thing when it comes to like a closed system, that there are these fees that you do need to ask about?
So all printers are going to have ongoing costs. There's cost of consumables, not just the resins themselves, but the tanks are disposable, or et cetera, the tank that the resin actually flows into. So there are ongoing costs in that respect. As far as licensing fees and such, I don't really see that with 3D printers so much. There might be extended warranties and so on, and maintenance costs, like some of the more expensive dental 3D printers, you can go as high as $1,000 a month as far as maintenance costs because of service calls and so on. But it's not so much licensing fees, although I do believe SprintRay has a monthly fee or a yearly fee that they charge if you're going to be using open resins. If you want to use it as an open system and use different resins not from SprintRay. So there's, I believe, an annual fee with them, but it's a nominal fee and probably worth it, if you're using resins other than SprintRay. But what you're really looking at is warranty fees. And then like Formlabs has what they call their dental service plan, which gives you the ability to call and actually talk to somebody on the phone if you have a problem with your printer. So they've actually branched out with the Formlabs company into they have a dental division now, which, for dentists, I think they need that sort of support system where you can just pick up the phone and call somebody and somebody will answer, rather than go through, when you buy electronics these days, if you have a problem, you have to file a ticket with the company online, and then you go back and forth a million times with emails and so on. So some of the dental 3D printer companies work a little bit differently. And of course, again, you're going to pay a premium for that. One of the things Formlabs does in particular, though, is if you have a problem, if you have their dental service plan, and you have a problem with the printer, they can't fix either by logging in or giving you some instructions over the phone. They will literally ship you a new printer, typically overnight, you know, so you're paying a premium for that. But if you rely on your technology in your practice like we do, that's certainly worth it, in my opinion. And
Oh,
whenever
yeah.
I
Oh, 100%.
recommend that printer to anybody, I do recommend as a dentist, you get that service plan, at least certainly at the initial purchase, because you don't know how to use it quite as good yet. So I would recommend that.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page with, because we sell the Medit scanner. We're always like, you're investing in this technology, have it covered, because same thing, like if anything goes down, we're there to cover it. So we have a few questions here, and I think I know what you're going to say to this, but which printer do you like the best? It depends, right?
It depends, like everything else. All right. So I have for most of the 3D printing we're doing in our practice, we use the Formlabs. Probably the main reason is because of reliability and also that it's delegable. So for example, my assistant can scan a patient, walk with an intraoral scanner, walk over to the design computer, design a night guard, and send it to the Formlabs printer without my intervention at all, right? Which is fantastic, because that frees me up to do other things. And they can do that for several types of appliances. Now, the one thing I don't probably delegate is surgical guides. I designed those myself. But the idea here is that the Formlabs ecosystem works so well, and they can do that from pretty much any computer in our practice, because it's wired. It's a Wi-Fi connected printer, so the printers are available from any computer we want them to be available from. Just have to install the software, which is free to install. So that's my favorite printer to use, because it just works so well in a dental setting. All right. However, I do use some of the cheaper, smaller printers quite a bit also when I need something fast, right? So for example, you see on this, you see right here, there's a little printer called the Frozen Sonic Mini 4K. That's one of my favorite printers right now. What's nice about it is that it's tiny. It's about the size of a small coffee maker. You can have several of them, right? We also have several Formlabs printers, each with different resins. So these cheaper printers allows you to buy a printer just for each resin. That way you don't have to be switching tanks and switching resins. So if I need to have something printed quickly, I can use that smaller printer. So I think most people who really get into 3D printing end up with several 3D printers, not just several of the same brand, but several of different brands also, because this little tiny printer here is very fast. I can print, a temporary hybrid. Let's say I'm doing an all-on-X case. I've put the implants in. I can actually print a hybrid that goes directly to the MUAs, and I can print that on this little printer in less than an hour.
That's fast.
And then that literally just screws into the implants, so that's fast. Whereas on a Formlabs, it's going to take you longer. It might take 2 hours to do that same print, right? But again, it's really what your needs are. If you're just starting out, which this is what the webinar is supposed to be about, I would recommend you go with a printer like the Formlabs, unless you're a really technical person. If you like tinkering with equipment and so on, then you can get one of the cheaper printers as well, in my opinion, and have good success with it. But as you start using 3D printing, your volume of things that you're printing is going to go up, and you'll appreciate having an easier workflow and delegating a lot of it as well.
And then as you're building out this workflow, the next question here is, what's the best way to get into designing? Should you do it on your own, or should you outsource? What software do you recommend?
So, okay, that's a very good question. And I'm actually versed in quite a few software programs, Blue Sky Plan, ExoCAD. We use D3 Splint for designing night guards. We have in our practice, we're really lucky to have assistants that we've trained really actually over the last 3 years to teach them this technology. And what we are using for night guards, for example, is D3 Splint. But I know quite a few people I've trained who are outsourcing, excuse me, night guard designs. And I would highly recommend, if you are just starting out with 3D printing, we do give a course on restorative 3D printing. We actually give a 3-day course. The first day is restorative, the second day is surgical guides, and the third day is aligners. Take a course, even if you're planning to outsource, because you do want to understand all the steps involved as well. However, we are outsourcing design as well. I don't think we're designing everything in-house. Probably the only thing that I'm sort of adamant about keeping in-house is my surgical guide design, okay? But this is where a lab like Evident comes in, where they can quickly turn around your designs for you so that you focus on the 3D printing part of it, which is, to me, the easiest part. You know, you start buying software or learning software, and it becomes very time consuming, not just the designing, but to actually learn how to use that design software. We have Exocad in our practice, which we use from time to time as well. But really, for doing things in a software like Exocad, I would say that part of it, you know, most of the members of our team, Dr. Kurt Bally and Dr. Reynal Gonzalez, who teaches the digital courses with us, they're both now outsourcing most of their designs, except their surgical.
We know Dr. Bally for sure. So
yeah, so I would say, you know, yes, get some software. Look, Blue Sky Plan is free, right? We teach people how to use that to do mock-ups and surgical guides and other things. Start playing around with it, learn how to do some simple things. But I would say start with 3D printing first, outsource a lot of it, and then, you know, you can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so another question that just came in was, you know, you said you've trained your assistants to design. What do you do when they leave?
That's a very good question. And that's, I think, something that is actually going to prevent them from leaving them.
To give them more accountability. Absolutely.
Yeah, well,
the great management
we invested in them, right? And of course, you know, they get paid well to do these things as well, you know. But for example, if we had to make a night guard, right, or a custom tray, before we got digital, they were making custom trays. So they would take an impression, go in the back, pour a stone model, wait for it to set, and then use the light cured tray material. And it, you know, it gets sticky and it's kind of messy to work with, right? And they would spend, you know, maybe 30, 40 minutes doing that. And nobody really liked doing that. Now they scan, go over to the computer, design the custom tray in 10 minutes and send it to the 3D printer. And it frees up their time to do additional things, but it's less messy. So they like working for us. But of course, that is a risk. You've invested all this time and effort into training your assistants to do this. But I think it actually helps keep them in our practice so they won't go looking elsewhere. Yeah.
Well,
they're excited about it. Yeah.
Well, it's fun. All right, so I'm just looking at the time. Time has flown by. So I was like, Dr. Ferguson, are you okay to go on for another 5-10 minutes maximum? Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's it. This is an interesting conversation about design. So I'd love to bring up a poll about, you know, everyone that's on the call here. How do you design your cases? Do you do it yourself? Do you outsource? Would you like us to call you and walk you through, you know, how to get set up with Evident? Let us know. And while people are filling out this poll, one cool thing is that, you know, Dr. Bergman, you use the Form Labs, is with Evident, we can actually nest that case for you. So instead of actually taking the time to, you know, open up the printing software and fill it in or nest the design, the design center can actually do that for you and send you a print ready file. So even more time saving. So pretty cool.
I can't tell you how valuable that service is. You know, we've actually worked with software companies and 3D printing companies to get them to merge together so that they can, you know, the design software can export directly into some of these printers. Because setting it up, getting the support structures right so that it'll print
It'd
reliably.
be really time consuming.
And it takes experience to know how
Yeah,
to do it
exactly.
properly.
Like your print can fail if you don't do it properly.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, it's a really great service. This is a cool question. Have you tried any permanent crown and bridge resins yet, and any recommendations for using them?
Yes, so I have tried the Bigo resins, the Formlabs version. Formlabs actually has a version from Bigo. It's a great resin. It's very strong. Is it permanent? It's certified for permanent. When you say permanent resin, it's certified for permanent use. But like any material you use in the mouth, you have to know your applications. All right. I can't say personally I've used it for permanent crowns, although I have a few out there that turned into permanent crowns. You know how that goes in practice. But it is strong. I would say that it's not as strong as an Emax crown, for example. If you look at the tensile strength and compressive strength on these materials, they are resins. They are microfilled, ceramic microfilled resins, but they are resins. So you have to know your applications. I know a few folks out there like Chad Gardner's using them to do veneers and having good success, you know, but they're more like composite veneers, more so than ceramics, okay? So even though the companies call them permanent, that just means they can be left in the mouth indefinitely. The reason we have a mill in our practice and the reason we still use labs for doing permanent crowns is because the strength of the materials more than anything. And then also the aesthetics. Now, what is nice about the printed resins is that they're very easy to stain and characterize, right? So that is one advantage of using some of these quote unquote permanent resins, is that you can characterize them very quickly chairside, make them look good, you know. But I'm a little bit where we are using them for long-term temps. We're using them, for example, for as temporary hybrids in lieu of using PMMA materials, because I think they're just as strong, especially if they're designed properly.
Okay, amazing. And again, I think I'm going to know your answer to this question as well. How much money should I be looking to spend on a printer?
Okay, so it's not just a printer that you have to buy, right? Again, I recommend you take some courses either online or in person. Most of our courses now are online, which is great. But it's the cost of the education to learn how to use the printer properly and, you know, do some design. It's the cost of the printer and then the cost of the post-processing equipment. So after the print comes out of the printer, it's wet. It has a liquid resin on it that needs to be washed. So you're going to need a wash system to wash and dry the prints, and then you're going to need a post cure. When the prints are first done in the printer, they're not at full strength, and this is especially important. Or biocompatibility for biocompatible resins, dental resins. They're not at full strength or full biocompatibility. So you need to do the proper post processing, which is the washing, and then a post curing as well, to get the strength and biocompatibility up to par, or up to, you know, the regulations that we need. And the system that I actually recommend for that is the form wash and the form cure. Now, what's nice about the form wash is you put the wet prints in there, hit a button, and it washes. And then when it's done washing, it lifts the prints out of the tank. And typically you're washing with isopropyl alcohol. And then the prints dry. And then once they're dry, they go into a light box, a light curing box, depending on the different material, how long you're going to keep it in there. For dental models, which aren't going in the mouth, typically about 10 minutes. For you know, surgical guides and other biocompatible resins, typically about 40 minutes. So this is all something that's delegated to my assistants, and having automated systems like that where you just push a button and it does it for you is great, even for your assistants, because it frees them up as well. So if you go with a printer like Formlabs, for example, you're going to be buying the printer plus the post-processing equipment. expect to spend about $6,000. All right, that's, you know, sort of the middle of the ground as far as pricing of 3D printers. Is actually a very reasonable price, I think,
Yes.
for what you're getting. And that's
Yeah.
typically what the dental service plan for a year also. If you're going to go with a lower cost printer, you can buy the printer for $300, buy a, you know, you could use a Tupperware container to wash your prints. I don't recommend that because who's got time to do that, you know? But you could buy a cheaper wash system on Amazon for $100, and then a post-cure system also for, you know, another $100 or less. But again, it's going to take you longer. For example, the post-curing of a surgical guide resin in a cheap Amazon type post-cure box, it might take you 2 hours or 3 hours to get to that level of post-curing that makes it biocompatible. It will get there, but it's just going to take longer versus buying something like the Form Cure, which is, you know, about $600, which will get you there much faster, and you'll be more
It's
efficient.
that, you know, like a combination of like cheap, fast, and easy, right? You can't have it all.
You can't have it all.
You can't have it all, yeah.
That said, you could buy a cheap printer and pair it with a Form Wash and Form Cure. A lot of people do that as well. So the Form Wash and the Form Cure, even though they're from Form Labs, a lot of people who have other printers, even other dental printers, are using those for the post-processing as well. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, it's okay. We're gonna do 2 more questions just to give people an idea of time, because I know we're now running out of our 10 minutes, but let's do our last 2. So first one, which printer is the fastest and probably enough or accurate enough for most dental applications?
So right now, as far as speed, 3D printing is slow in general, first of all. You know, it can take you up to 2 hours to print a single model, or, you know, you can print in volume, and that cuts down the per model time. So even some of the slower printers, the more you print on a particular printer. As far as speed right now, I would say the Sonic Mini 4K is probably the fastest one that we're using clinically in practice. Again, I can print a temporary with that in as little as 15 minutes. You know, I can print a hybrid in about 50 minutes. You have EnvisionTech, which is around the same as far as speed. That's a dental, you know, more sophisticated dental printer. Comes at a much higher price point. Sprint Ray is good with speed as well, right? That's a dedicated dental type printer as well. But again, you're going to pay a higher premium for that type of printer. And we are actually testing a printer right now from DentaFab, which can cut down that hybrid print time to under 15 minutes. So expect that in the next few months, you're going to see that particular printer and a few others come online as others adopt the technology in that printer for, you know, for speed. One of the printers that we're going to be receiving soon is the Accurata Soul, which I'm looking forward to testing, which is also supposed to be fast. Probably not as fast as that 15-minute print that I just mentioned on the DentaFab printer, but the speeds have gotten faster. A lot of things cannot be done in real time, though. You know, don't expect you're going to be printing temporaries in real time. You know, the only thing that we think right now that is useful to print in real time is probably the temporary hybrids, because again, those are going right in after we place the implants. We scan and do a little design work, and then we can print that. And we're doing that because of the accuracy we're getting and the stability we're getting. Not so much even the speed. Even if it was taking an hour to print, we feel that it's still something valuable to do, you know, the same day. But most of the things we're printing are not same day. Okay.
Got it. All right. More questions, but I'm going to combine this because it's these more questions come in, but it's all kind of under the same theme. And it's, do you scan every patient, and what does it matter what kind of scanner you have? Do certain scanners work better with certain 3D printers? So kind of a more kind of multi-pronged scanner question for you to wrap it up.
So we don't scan every patient that comes in, but any patient that we're thinking of doing any smile design work or surgical guides, etc., we do scan. You know, the process of scanning does several things. It gives you more information, which is always great when you sit down to look at a case. It also tunes the patient into what is in their mouth, which is a big motivational factor for patient case acceptance. So we found that it's actually very useful to scan most patients, all right? And then the other thing is we have a record now of that patient's dentition that's unique. It's different than photographs and different than x-rays. For example, if you look at what percentage of your new patients require a crown or two, right, or crowns in general, it's quite a large percentage. So what we can do is we can actually save time on the next appointment if we scan them at the initial exam appointment, and then we can just get started with the crown prep the next time because we already have the pre-op scan. And then we can just cut out that one tooth from that pre-op, reload the pre-op scan from the initial appointment, and just cut out that one tooth and scan the prep crown in. So that's useful as well. As far as scanners go, we are agnostic when it comes to 3D printing world with scanners. You can use any scanner with any 3D printer pretty much. There is intermediary design software, but I don't know of any system, any 3D printing system right now that is closed. The only system that I really know that is closed as far as the scanner and then outputting to the design service would be iTero, which is tied to Invisalign. All right, now we don't use Invisalign, we do our own in-house aligners because of the significant cost savings to that. And I know Evident does aligner designing as well. So it's actually, in my opinion, one of the reasons, you know, to go with a scanner other than iTero, which is not a bad scanner, but if you're going to use, you know, a different aligner service than Invisalign, then, you know, I'm not sure it's worth spending the extra money on an iTero, for example. All right.
Yeah, the open system in terms of, you know, in the scanner world is the future, right? Like
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons we went with the scanner that we have, you know, because it's open.
Yeah, no, it's the way to go. And as you know, we offer the Medit here at Evidence, so we're always happy to chat about open systems and, you know, what that means for digital workflows. So I think, you know, we've gone 13 minutes over, and I want to thank everyone for sticking around. I think we could have gone on for a lot longer. I have several questions that we didn't even get to. So if we didn't get to your question, you know, shoot me an email, or you can send them directly to Dr. Ferguson. He had his email there on the first slide, or I'm happy to forward any questions onto him. You know, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. It was fascinating. I'd love to, you know, do this again. And so actually, before we wrap up, we're going to do our last poll before you leave. So let's pull this up. I forgot about this one, since you're talking about scanning, let's talk about scanners. We'll take a few minutes here, or a few seconds.
While we're waiting on that poll, I do want to thank Evident for hosting me on this webinar. And also, I encourage everybody to join the 3D printing Facebook group. Lots of good information. It's sort of a nice place, especially for novices. A lot of, not just myself, but a lot of people on there who are regular, frequent visitors to the group, and very helpful with people getting started with unbiased information. Yeah.
It's fantastic. This really authentic environment where you can, you know, ask the questions you might not necessarily ask, because you know, you might think they're stupid. You know, no stupid questions. So again, thank you, Dr. Ferguson. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Have a great weekend, guys. Take care.